Welcome back, everyone, to How to Run a Law Firm in 2025. This is part 2 of Matthew and Mai's conversation about software. We had so much to talk about last time, and we want to be respectful of your time that we broke it up into 2 episodes so we can keep around that half an hour mark. We know you're busy. We're excited to have you back. If you haven't listened to episode 1 on software first, hit pause, go back and listen to that episode so you can be all caught up. And when you're ready, hit play because here's part 2 of our conversation about how to run a law firm in 2025 software.
So when you were getting started with your new practice areas, did you rely on any CLE materials, document databases? Like, how did you come up with your estate planning stuff? Because I get mine still through the Illinois Institute of Continuing Legal Education.
Yeah, I'm very jealous. That is not, unfortunately, how it works in Colorado. So, Colorado, we got to step it up here. So, when I got started, I went to the CLE board. No, that's not the right name. The CLE organization, and looked up the 101 classes. So estate planning 101, like how do I not totally screw things up, which should be their subtitle. And I just went and took that full day CLE, and they recommended during that what we have in Colorado is called the Orange Book, which is all the forms, right? But you have to purchase that. It is a one-time purchase. And they did, at least back then, offer it digitally. I'm assuming that's still the case. And so I use those as a starting point for things where there's a court interaction. At least here in Colorado, the court also has all of their standard forms. Those are available for free because they want the public to also be able to access them. So for family law and probate, that's where I went, is just I pulled those court forms and then took those 101 CLEs and learned the basics. For tax prep, the IRS does have a lot of information online. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to find, but same kind of thing. There wasn't a one-stop source. At least I haven't looked into it too much, but I haven't found for those types of resources. So it was really cobbling together what I could find online and then talking to folks. Luckily with the IRS, they want their standard form. So there's not a lot of room to create a nice looking one. So it really depends, I think, on your practice area and then knowing what you need. Like for me, for the different practice areas, I need a task management system and I need a case management system that has everything that I need and all the communication that we've had and where are they in the process. And I wanted to be able to structure that for how I work. So if you're in a practice area where that's needed, there's software out there for you. If you can do it with Gmail and Google Docs and just a basic integration of the two, go for it. That's amazing. I think it just depends on what you're doing. But for me, I didn't like the forms and I also wanted to be able to create them more efficiently. So I do use use Clio's document automation tool that was integrated for a long time. It worked pretty well. It's a little clunky. It can be not as user friendly to set up and takes a lot of investment there. And once I hit the ceiling with that, where I just felt like I wanted it to do more things, it wasn't quite doing everything I wanted to. I switched over to Gavel and do all of my, I would say, other than the tax prep stuff, because I haven't set that up yet, all of my document drafting through that. And it's just made it so much easier and allowed me to really customize it. But again, my practice areas are very different than yours, but it's interesting to see how we're trying to achieve the same goal, but we're just coming at it differently because we have different needs.
Yep, absolutely. Something that I haven't actually had to use yet, but I do have an account for. And I think it's worth mentioning because we do think about these things sometimes. Since I work from my home, like I have a shared office space type thing that I could go to in town, but like mailing things, right? And so there is this company called Switch Mail, and that is, you pay a little bit extra to do the mailing. And I think there's other platforms out there now like this. And again, I have an account. I've never used it, but it's one of those things that you got to think about if you're going to be having to send actual documents, certified mail, other things due to the nature of your practice. Sometimes that happens. And even when you're not billing by the hour, to always bring it back to ditching the billable hour on Law
Yes.
Subscribed, your time is valuable in that you want to control it. You don't assign a money value to time, but your time is valuable in that spend it doing more important things. And going to the post office and filling out certified mail stuff as a solo practitioner is a massive waste of time. And so paying a small premium to a Switch Mail style service, that's like an online platform, totally, totally worth it. I can't speak from experience there because I haven't really ever needed to do that. just the nature of my practice, but something for folks to consider. Some other things, and I want to know what you use for this, is your office phone. So are you using a digital platform? Did you actually get like a actual phone? Is it an app? What are you doing?
For a long time, I used TalkRoot. I have never had a separate phone, never wanted a separate phone. One phone is enough for me, but I wanted to be able to make calls on my computer because that's where I sit a lot of the time when I have calls, but also be able to take it on the road. I used TalkRoot for a long time. They had a little bit of connection issues that could have just been my area, but I was generally happy with them. And then found out that Verizon, who does my cell service anyway, has a similar software called One Talk. So I switched over to them last year, I think, earlier this year. And it's been about the same. I can't say there's a huge improvement. The cost was a little bit less, so that was a nice savings. But it is an app on my phone, so it will ring through to my phone if I have that turned on. Most of the time I don't, but it will ring through to my desktop or my laptop when I'm working. And that's how I make and receive calls. It also has text messaging, which I find really helpful. I know some lawyers are adverse to texting with their clients. I don't have as much of a big deal with it. I think it's depending on the client, it's a lot easier to get a hold of them. But that's what I use for my phone, and I was able to easily port over my number. That was my biggest concern. Was I've had this number for 9 years. I do not want to get a new number. So if you do change, just making sure you can keep your number, I think, is a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's going to be some desire to try to find like a freebie version of something like this. And the problem with that is it's training on the data. And that was before even AI hit the scene. Like it was like using the data that of like conversations and stuff. Like even if they were turning it into tokens and making it not identifiable, they are doing that. And usually, not always, usually when you pay for something, if you're using a free Gmail, they're doing that. You have confidential client communications in there, probably not confidential anymore. Like I've not seen that lawsuit or that motion filed, but like from a technical standpoint, you're like that's a problem. There's an ethical quandary there. So it's worth the $6 a month to pay for Google Workspace, right? If you like Gmail, same thing with Google Voice. There's a free version of that. I use the paid one. Starts at $10 a month, and then there's additional fees on top based on how much you're using it. I barely use it. And as a result of that, I'm paying less than $15 a month on average. For less than $15 a month, it integrates right in Google Workspace. So if you're in your Gmail, there's like a little button there, and you could see your phone ringing when you're getting a call, and so you could just answer it right there without having to open up a different app on the computer. There's an app on your phone, makes it really easy to use. People see I have an iPhone. If I see people in person at a conference or something like ABA Tech Show, and they're like, "I always get green bubbles from you, but you have an iPhone. Like, why is that?" So that's my Google Voice number for my Google Voice for Business. So it's showing up as a green bubble for that reason. I did have an attorney on the show that talked about actually like iPhone to iPhone messaging being encrypted, which is interesting to know that like you can do that, but it's your personal number. And generally speaking, it's good practice to not integrate personal stuff with work stuff. I do know one of the business credit cards I have, they do give like 5% back for business phones, business phone plans. If you wanted to get like a separate phone, I do not want to do that. I don't want to carry around. I want to carry around the least amount of things as possible. And so I just like having an app on the phone. I've also heard really good things about Open Phone, but I've not used it myself. I know a lot of startups use Open Phone, and I've met a couple other lawyers now that have used Open Phone, in particular with teams. So again, solopreneur here, don't have a team, don't need to worry about routing and other things. So Open Phone's maybe not for me, but if I ever grew my team, I would probably look into that. And they also say the same thing, Lauren. They say porting your number into Open Phone system is really straightforward, is what at least what they market.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful to know. And I think your point about the encryption with text messaging or just using free services, right? Why are they free? What is the benefit to the company that they're receiving? Another piece of software, or at least something I think we all need to think about, is just security in general, no matter what we're signing up for. But then also, like you explained, backups. Like everything's in the cloud, but we need to have it replicated in other spaces, whether that's on a actual hard drive or you just have a backup system. I use Backblaze for my entire computer. So God forbid something were to happen, I could easily restore it on a different machine pretty quickly. But really thinking about how you're backing things up and then just security in general. using VPNs when you're out and about, using some sort of or scanning software that is just looking at what is coming through your machine, and then doing some training. I think there's probably a lot that's you could get for free if you Googled or looked on YouTube for just some basic, like, how do phishing scams work and what are folks out there looking to do to get your personal information so that they can use it, right? Even us small solo firms, we would think we're very small fish in a very big pond. Who would care about us? Who's going to attack us? But we do have information that folks may want about sensitive topics or about businesses, right? To a hacker, that may seem really lucrative. They may have no idea. So I think that we can't bury our head in the sand about it and really think across the board, no matter whether you're looking at a case management system or your phone or just how are you backing everything up in general? What is your connection like to the outside world? Is that secure? It's just really important to make sure that's in place. I would probably actually back up a few steps and say that's probably one of the first few things if I was starting over, I would just have from the jump so that it was routine for me, and I never had to worry about hopefully ever having an issue.
Yeah, yeah, and what's nice about for me with that setup of having the Google Cloud storage through Workspace and the iCloud storage through Apple is that my machine, I let it using AI and algorithms determine what should be on the machine versus just in the cloud. And it will bring things on and off the machine and in the cloud. So from a processing power standpoint, my machine is optimizing itself in terms of how its speed and its ability to process things. So having both of those cloud things, like everything is always in that's in Google is always in Google, and sometimes it's on my Mac, and everything that's on my Mac that's just on my Mac is always in iCloud and sometimes on my Mac. And so there's not all overlap, but there's enough overlap that I'll always be able to get something definitely worth checking out. And frankly, if you're an iPhone user anyway, like that iCloud stuff is amazing. And I have literally like tens of thousands of photos and like almost 10,000 videos because I have a child. And like being able to look at photos from whenever I first got my first smartphone, going back to what was it, like 2012. I've even got some old photos that I uploaded on there from high school. So I could go back and show when we're in public settings, pictures of my friends that are also there and what they used to look like to like tease them a little bit. And me, I used to have hair so people could see what I look like with hair. Like things like love the cloud. Cannot say enough good things about the cloud. And if Apple's not going to give up stuff about terrorists to the government, I feel super, super secure in there. Another important software thing, speaking of iOS, the passwords app. Do you have a password app at all, Lauren?
I do. I use 1Password. What about
What
you?
what is that costing you
Oh my gosh,
approximately?
I don't know if there is a cost. Maybe? It's very minimal. If it is, it's not ringing a bell. So it's either free or it's very minimal per year.
All right, we're consulting Perplexity, folks, and we're gonna see what one pass
How my
costs.
memory is? Yes.
So there are registration fees, and then if you just do digital, it's $10 a month.
Okay. I don't feel like I pay that. I don't know. But
Maybe
super cheap.
your grandfathered in.
I might be, yeah. I've been using it forever.
Yeah, so I know with some of those paid apps, there are things like you could set up like a break glass in case of emergency type situation where somebody could get into your passwords if they need to, if something ever happened to you. With the passwords app that comes with Apple, what they did is they took the passwords functionality, password manager in Safari, and they made it its own app. And so now if you're an iOS user and you're running the most up-to-date software on all your Mac OS, iOS, whatever, there's this passwords app that's integrated. And just like any other password app, and even Google's password manager, it will tell you if you have a password that's been exposed, that's not strong, and all these things. You could also create groups and share it with like your spouse. Like now, my wife, if anything happens to me, she has access to all my passwords, right? And vice versa. That requires a lot of transparency in a relationship. So maybe that's not for everybody, but for me and my partner, like we can get into whatever we need. And also, she has a couple of grocery and like Target accounts, and we'll just use those accounts because you accumulate points or whatever. And I have that for other things because we accumulate points. So like, it's sometimes it's good to have just one spouse handles one type of platform, whatever. But the passwords app has been really great because I found out I have over 600 passwords, and I was using like 10 or 12 passwords across a lot of them. So it took several hours on a weekend, but I went through and I gave strong passwords to everything. And now it's all saved and I could get in there. My wife could get in there in case of an emergency. She was also using some really not strong passwords. Now she is too, right? I was guilty of it as well. But now, like, I don't have to think of what's that passphrase for that thing. Super strong, really hard to crack passwords app, and it's free. So you don't have to pay the $10 a month or whatever to these platforms, but you lose some features with that, just like with the text expander example. Now, before I forget, and we're going to cover more tech, and this is going to be one of the longer episodes, I think, Lauren, because it just kind of has to be, right?
There's
Um,
so much.
yeah. Um, is when you're like signing up for these subscriptions, because they're all going to be subscriptions, annual or monthly, probably keep track in a spreadsheet. Could be Excel, could be Google Sheets, maybe ClickUp has like a way to track this stuff. Sometimes bank apps will track these things for you too. So you know what your monthly spend is going to be or your annual spend or both. I break it down. Even if I pay annually, I still have a column for monthly where it divides the annual by 12. So I have that in there. And then I just realized while I was building that, I pay for a lot of other things on subscription that are not tech. So you were talking about cyber. What about cyber insurance, right? What about malpractice insurance? Like these are things that if you're paying for them and some jurisdictions require you have malpractice insurance, you should probably have it anyway. I'm definitely way overinsured, but it's only for like, it only costs me like $10 more a month or something to get like quadruple the coverage. So it's totally worth it in my opinion. But I put that pricing, like I have a different tab. So I have just all of my monthly pricing. I still like to be able to look at my tech separate from all in like monthly costs, but you could just start tracking your monthly expenses. And at least for me, most of it is tech. And so even if you just do the tech, you're going to get a sense of, oh, that's what it costs every month for an operating expense or annually for an operating expense. That's why I could confidently say what my annual recurring expenses are going to be. Like if you upgrade your hardware, totally different story, right? Your expenses will be more. But even with the way you pay your employees, like Lauren and I don't have employees, but sometimes it's a weekly, sometimes it's biweekly, sometimes it's a monthly thing. That should also go in this thing so you could track it, right? And that's low tech, but definitely be tracking these things. Uh, we talked about, we've had conversations about marketing as well, and there's tech that's associated with that, which we've just sort of surface level mentioned. So, Lauren, what are you using for like marketing related software tech?
So most of mine is around the actual production of the content. So I use Canva, huge fan for any kind of flat image text-based content. And then for the video creation, I do use CapCut for easy editing on my phone. But then because of the podcast and longer form videos that I do for different areas, I also use Adobe's editing software. So they have Audition and Premiere for audio and video. So that's really in terms of marketing outside of AI, which I know we'll get to. That's my sort of secret employee. That's where my marketing budget is on those software. So I don't use a service that like schedules them. I just go in and do that. I have time on my calendar each week. I know that's often a place that can be really helpful if you want to batch work things. And then I do use MailChimp. I have been using it so long that I don't pay anything, but what the features I have are now under a paid plan. So I will refuse to get rid of it because I know I'll have to pay if I ever try to come back. But
Yeah.
for me, that's free, and that's how I'll market to, like, existing clients, but it really is in the content creation, it's not in the actual execution of posting. What about you?
Also Canva. And I forgot that it had this feature. And then when you said I don't schedule posts, I'm like, I do schedule a lot of posts, but not through a third party app. But then I think Canva lets you do that. And sure enough, I looked it up and they do. And I think there are some limitations based upon you can't do certain. So if you like to post a certain way in LinkedIn, you can't necessarily do that in Canva. So you're always going to get better, more functionality direct on the platform. But if you do like Canva and you're in Canva and you don't care about fine tuning it, right within Canva, you can just totally do that. Are you a pro user of Canva or just the freemium version?
Pro.
Okay, well, I let's throw on Canva, the freemium version, though, as like a sign up when you're getting started. It doesn't cost anything. You start playing around, come up with a logo. You're not going to get access to the pro features, but just to get started, like it's amazing. And there are AI features in Canva. I've played around with them. They are mediocre, or at least I am when it comes to image generation with Gen AI. I am just a mediocre prompter when it comes to that. Descript, I've mentioned Descript a lot. That is my primary content creation tool. And it does a lot of things that other apps do. And so I try to maximize my usage of it for how I leverage it. Um, uh, Substack is like, that's how I publish the content mostly. There's like newsletter features built into certain levels of Google Workspace. So if you just want to do it through Google Workspace, you could do that. There are reasons to not, if you're going to be emailing a lot of people at once in a newsletter, you don't necessarily want to do it directly in your email and you want to use a third party platform. Otherwise, your domain could be identified as a spam domain. And so you want to be careful about how many people you're emailing. And if you're just emailing straight from straight from your email. So be careful about that. And I'm just looking here at my list to see if there's anything else I use that I consider marketing. But things like LinkedIn and Meta platforms, right? You got to be on these platforms if you want to market yourself. It's really hard to look down without moving my head so that if I talk while I'm reading something, the mic will still pick it up because of my mic placement, going back to an earlier episode. Uh, just catching up on some things I think we flew over is the video tech. If you're in Microsoft, you got Teams, Google, you've got Google Meet. Zoom has freemium and integrates with everything, and everyone has Zoom. So that's a potential video feature there. And you could use your Zooms to record yourself and use it for marketing too if you need something that's free and low tech. Though Descript, I would recommend you use Descript for that as well. Descript has a freemium version. And related to marketing, and I'm curious if you're on any of these platforms, Lauren, is just like referral platforms, right? So like I'm on Overture, I'm on Lexamica. These are ways that while I could get business, and it's hard to think of them as software, but they're like tech platforms. So I think it's in that if they fall into any category that we're talking about, I think it falls into this category. And I don't know if I'd put bar associations in that category. You and I are both part of the above the line network, and nothing's really manifested there yet in terms of referrals or marketing. But certainly like things like that, like these attorney platforms online where you could get and share business. Anything that you're doing, or are you on those platforms?
I'm not on those ones. I think I signed up way when I first started on Avo. Justia is maybe how you say it.
Yeah.
So I have a profile on there just so I could claim my profile. I don't think I have a super common name, but I wanted to make sure that if folks searched, and because of the nature of those platforms, they can come up higher in search rankings until my website did. I wanted to make sure at least I had some content on them, but I haven't used any of the like referral ones or ones that are more specific to growing business. I don't know if in my space that makes the most sense. I can certainly see from a B2B standpoint, those are probably really smart to be a part of, but I think you'll just have to know for your own practice area, but there definitely are a ton of them out there and take advantage of them if they do help generate some business.
Yeah, if you have niche interests or you have some unique groups, there's Slack groups, there's Discord groups that you could join, and just you play that. Lauren, I would love some help coming up with something that rhymes that's not so specific to a gender, but be that reply guy. Be that like somebody posts a question, answer it. Like Reddit could be leveraged in this way too,
Mhm.
and I recommend that for LinkedIn too. If you're like, I don't know what to post on LinkedIn, you can just you could select like for me and Lauren, do this for me and Lauren and do this for other people that post a lot of good content on LinkedIn, but you click the bell and you click see all messages. And so I do this for like your Alex Sue's, your Matt Margolises. I do this for some subscription experts like Robbie Kellman Baxter, where I see everything they post the moment they post it. You don't want to overuse this feature. And then you can engage in that popular content on LinkedIn. And that's how you could start to create awareness. And people ask me like, how did I get so many followers on LinkedIn? That was how I got followers on LinkedIn, as I was just in the comments contributing a lot and like high, not like congratulations. I'd say actual useful things. And then people would look at my profile and connect with me or follow me. And only after I crossed like the 3,000 follower threshold would my own actual posted content that gets shared and liked actually get me followers. So same thing is true in these other platforms. Post valuable content, not legal advice, but legal information and valuable content. Do you have a similar perspective on that, Lauren? I see a lot of head
Yeah,
nods.
Exactly, yeah, I think that's and it's free, it's just your time to do it, and when you're first starting out, man, that's what you got in droves. So, focusing on where we started, how do you get clients? How do you get folks calling you who will sign an engagement agreement and pay you money for your services? I think you have to show yourself as a valuable asset and able to solve somebody's legal problem, and the way that you do that is by getting out there. And so any of those platforms where there's some sort of discussion, whether it's more traditional social media or something like Reddit or Discord, where folks are actually asking questions and looking for information and guidance from others, is going on there and just adding your perspective and some basic legal information will quickly make you an expert in the space. And folks will then want to learn more from you or go, oh, she knows how to solve my problem. Let me call her. So those are so easy, 10 minutes a day, a couple times a week, just going in and looking for things that you can engage with. And like you said, not just writing, great, congratulations, exclamation point, but actually contributing to the conversation will really pay off dividends in the end.
Yeah, and this we've gotten away from the tech, but it's related, but we're away from it. But question for you, do you find it's easier to do because you're your own boss, that you could actually say whatever you want? Because I do think maybe some lawyers are scared to actually have substantive comments because they might see that it's perceived a certain way by their employer.
Yes. Yeah, I have not thought about that because I've not been in that space, but I don't have a hesitation because at the end of the day, I answer to myself. So I'm not super worried. But yes, if you do find that it could be perceived a certain way, maybe that's not the best strategy for you. So something to think about for sure. But yeah, I've never had that thought because I don't have my boss is wonderful.
Yeah, me too. I think it's important to bring that up though, because while this series is called How to Run a Law Firm in 2025, if you're listening to this and that's you, maybe you should think about starting a law firm in 2025 and then tune back in and re-listen all the episodes on how to run it. With that, I'm sure we could keep talking about technology. I'll just rattle off a couple things I missed. Wave accounting, which we've talked about before. ScanSnap. There is software that comes with that, and that's a hardware thing that I missed from our hardware episode. But the ScanSnap is an amazing scanner if you try to be paperless like me. And the software that comes with that lets you mess around with duplex scanning and some AI naming conventions. And so that's another great one. And as far as web browsers, while I do use Safari for some things, I'm mostly all in on Chrome because I'm Google Workspace. So what's your browser and any other last second software tools?
Chrome all the way. Also use Wave app for accounting, which has been wonderful. I have not needed a scanner, but I will keep the other one in mind. And yeah, my only last one, if you are a Mac user, I find this super helpful. I learned about this years ago, is Alfred. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Matthew, but
No, I'm learning something new. I'm very excited, Lauren.
yeah, so it's a really great it's essentially a search, but it is much more powerful than at least what I have experienced the native search for the OS. And there's a quick keystroke for me. I think it's option spacebar and it pops up and I can search for documents, folders really quickly. So I like it because it saves me from opening the finder and then drilling into the 12 layers of folders to find that particular client folder. And what I also love about it is it can be a quick calculator, so you can pull it up and instead of searching, I can do, what's 2,700 plus 472, and it'll give me an answer. So that's my other one that I use all the time. I think it's either free or relatively cheap per year. But Alfred's a good little extra there to add on.
So I know I could do math in the search bar and I don't have Alfred, but that's a relatively new feature. And they probably do it because Alfred was doing it for people.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, very cool. That's a super cool tool. I think we could probably keep talking in more detail, but that's enough for folks for now about software. Next episode is all about the AI software that we're using or thinking about or experimenting with or hearing about. So stay tuned for that.